Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is James Morrison from Hyland Software. I'm joined today by Mr. Brian Langamo. Want to introduce yourself, Brian?
Hey everybody, thanks for joining today.
So today we're here to talk about building low-code applications with WorkView. And really what that is the data, the content, and automation all in one place. You'll hear some of the terms that are in the industry today, like rapid application development, low code for another example. So we're going to address some of those here in just a moment. But the agenda itself, we're going to talk about what is WorkView, some of the features and end users experience as you build these applications, what that looks like on the end user side. Also some resources for you that we can leave behind, some solutions that you can grab and test out, some areas that you can go and actually play with the solution and turn it off, and it'll essentially, it's unbreakable, so to speak. And lastly, we would finish it up with a brief demo where I can show you guys exactly what we mean when we say rapid application development. So first, I just want to address some of the buzzwords that you'll hear in the industry today, like low code. The ability to build an application with minimal hand coding. And really this comes into play in two real valuable reasons. One is during the building process itself. Obviously, it's going to be a lot easier to build using tools that provide low to no code. But the other side is that intellectual knowledge. Any type of coded solution, typically, I cannot tell you how many times we hear, oh, we use this application and we can't really change it because the person who built it left, or we had a contract with them and we no longer do. And even if a third party comes in, it's a lot more difficult to go in and manage some custom coded application versus something that was put together using these tools. Low code development, right? Drop-down menus, radio buttons, all things that a lot of our customers are familiar with on the builder side. And then again, when we talk about low code, not only the drop-downs and things like that, think about our platform, how it provides low code. Things like autofill keyword sets. I know this is perfect. This is case number 123 or patient ID 123. And we can instantaneously grab all that other data to populate it. And that happens on both the intake side as well as new cases that get created. We can very easily tie to existing data, not only in our system, but third-party systems. So again, that whole idea of a content services platform, when you're going to build an application, 99% of the time, it's going to tie to existing content, forms, and a workflow process. Those are things we've been doing for nearly 30 years. So building an application on top of that functionality really just makes sense. So to us, what is WorkView? It's a relational database tool that really allows you to build an interface for those users to interact with the data. And like I mentioned, hook to all those other tools in the OnBase tool set, like workflow and forms, and even a content creation tool if you need to create a case summary or something like that. And for any of the folks on the call that are not a relational database expert, we have built these from very simple to complex. I built one specifically. This is a strange sidebar, but one of my hobbies is fishing, and my friends and I fish for sharks and tag them and release them. Well, we built an application to track that. If you've never built a relational database, this is really easy to understand. What would a person standing on the shore have anything to do with the shark swimming in the ocean? There's no relationship there. That catch record is the relationship between those, and then the ability to really slice that data in any way you see fit. Show me all the sharks of this type that were caught. Show me all sharks caught by this particular angler. Show me all sharks caught in this location. We take that, flip it to the business world, it's really innumerable use cases. A lot of our customers have really fallen on the left side of the house for many years, and even our prospects, they look at their content and the workflow that ties to it, and they're not addressing all those little what-if applications that exist. And think about where you're using a spreadsheet or an Access database or a custom application, or worse yet, none of the above, and managing it with emails and maybe a SharePoint site, things that are completely disconnected. And again, one other thing to note here, the related activities that you see on the bottom right-hand side, we can not only tie to all the content, workflow, and rules, the if this, then that, if this case exists, then automatically tie this document to that case. Then we look at the bottom right-hand side, all those related activities that can occur. This is really powerful because this can happen either on an ad hoc fashion or the system can do it for us. And what I mean by that is I might be looking at a particular case or incident or an onboarding, for example, for an employee, and I can add a particular task that needs to be done, or every single time that hits the system, the system can add, that checklist type of process that needs to be done from start to finish. And I'm not going to talk through this. I just want to note, this isn't something new to us. We've been building and developing this tool for nearly 20 years, or I should say over 20 years now in 2021. Over the last few years, or the last 10 years, arguably the biggest enhancements, the ability for us to tie to what's natively our workflow engine, and some really fast development tools, in particular one called the ACE file tool that allows us to build an application starting in Microsoft Excel for our data model. And really, this is the right tool for the right person. If you are a business user, what we're able to do is really take your vision and make it a reality really quickly through that low-code development, right? So build with you and your developer hand in hand, making changes to these applications. Once you build this and click go live, inevitably there's always things that you want to change going forward. We make that really easy. And you can own certain elements of the solution. So certain drop downs and data sets, we can build the solution in an intuitive way where we might be pointing to your own data set that you can manipulate. So hey, the certain case types that are coming in. Great example last year, an employee leave application that might have existed, and leave types might have been FMLA, PTO, or whatever that might be, COVID-19 leave, right? That was something that a lot of organizations really struggled with last year, and how we're going to manage that type of process. And inevitably, it ended up on a lot of people's spreadsheets, right? Excel sheets with that information. The developer side, that rapid application development, you really never have to start over. In my past life, I built a few Access database solutions, and I can tell you, it was almost easier for me to go and spin up a new solution in Access than it was to go and change something that existed or that somebody had already built in the wrong way, I should say. And that C-level side, using something you already own to build these applications, right? We're enterprise content services platform. We can store virtually any type of content in the system. Why would you not build those applications on top of that system that can natively tie to that content and build more content and even create content out of the system, using document composition or some of our other tools that we have available. So we talk about, the functional use cases. I already mentioned like a checklist type of process, but think about any of the complex forms that you have where you might have 4 or 5 tabs on a single form. That might be a great use case for WorkView, where we're clearly managing a lot of data and controlling who can see it and where, when they can see it. WorkView is a great solution for those complex forms. Any of the workflows, if you've ever tried to whiteboard or Visio diagram a workflow, you hit a step that looks like a spider web. That might be a great use case to even kick off an actual WorkView object at that step. I mentioned checklists before. Every time we're going to make this hiring decision, these 3 things need to be done, and then maybe give you the ability as the hiring manager to add some other components to that person's employee profile. Any type of collaboration. We mentioned creating those tasks and onboarding. If this is a workflow, typically workflow happens very linear. So we've decided to hire Jim, and it first lands on IT, and they're going to create an Active Directory account, and then it goes to maybe mobile. Well, as soon as it hits mobile, they order me a new phone. They're not clicking next in the process until they've actually done their work. So it can sit there for a long period of time. Whereas if we're creating this in a collaborative type of WorkView application, everyone can do their work at the same time. We can even move it to the next step automatically once all that work's been completed. And then we think about things like timer-based workflows, correspondence and document generation. If every time that a contract hits that this is going to expire in 60 days from now, we're going to automatically send this notification. Those are very easy for us to manipulate in WorkView by using something like a trigger or some other tools that we have available. And again, like I said, generating documents out of the system. If you need to create a case summary, not to go down a dark path, we just built a solution for a medical examiner where we're building an autopsy report on the back end, where we're taking all this data and compiling it in a thoughtful way. And really, all of these tools that you're seeing here, all these functional use cases, this is where we see customers using them today. You know, the shared spreadsheets, the email inbox that might be linked out to a SharePoint site or something like that. Any of those checklists that you might have on paper that get generated, or a paper form that's 4 or 5 pages, right? Well, we find those things in virtually every organization. I encourage you, think about where you have some of that low-hanging fruit that we might be able to augment. If you're using a shared spreadsheet, I asked the question, who was the last person that edited that cell? What's the history of that? How are you tying documents to that particular Excel spreadsheet? And oftentimes we will see a column that says something like status. Well, how are you updating that status? That's not happening in an automated fashion. That's somebody manually going in there and changing it. I've also seen the column that says documents, where it's linking out to a SharePoint site or something like that. We can consolidate and put all of those things in one place and lay reporting, document management, all those components using a single tool. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Langemo here. And let me go ahead and just give him keyboard and mouse so he can move me forward here.
Thanks, Jim. I think it works. Yep, there we go. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the user experience and the features and functions of WorkView itself. So to start off, what you're looking at here is in the Unity client, we're looking at a predefined filter. So we're displaying all our contracts that are in their application. Should take a step back real quick and just to level set. We're showing our contract management application specifically because it is agnostic across all the verticals that we work in and serve. So that's why we're showing this. But as Jim mentioned, the applications are across the board, whether it be a medical space or asset management or something along those lines. So we're looking at a predefined filter here that's just based on configuration from the administrator themselves. We also have the ability to do like a search filter. So if I were to click on the search for a contract that was highlighted in green a moment ago, when I did that, it actually presented to me all of the metadata values that I can search on. So whether I'm searching for a company name or expiration date, so on and so forth. The great thing and really powerful thing is our user-created filters. And this is really where the power that I see of WorkView is when you allow for power users to create their searches. And these searches are going to actually, I'm going to show you in a minute here, can actually almost be used as a reporting tool as well. So a user-created filter allows for users using point-and-click configuration to not only dictate what columns or what data points are being pulled back in that search result or that report, but also the user entry that we saw a moment ago of what kind of contract am I searching for, or when the expiration date is. And then if I move a little bit further over to the right is the fixed constraints, and that's actually displayed on the lower part of the screen is the fixed constraints. You'll see that we're limiting the company state to Ohio. So just quick and easy ways of moving over attributes or metadata values on the left-hand side, moving them over to the fixed constraints and putting the value in which you want to constrain that search results to.
Hey, Brian, just to comment on a real use case that I saw for this. We had a national healthcare provider that needs to provide audits on a monthly basis. Well, their audit team previously would export all this data to Excel and then would sort by state and would chop it up. Well, now that they use our tool for this, everybody comes in here, and when I'm assigned to a particular state, it's as simple as coming in here and changing the state I'm assigned to, saving this filter, and now that filter's live, for me on the fly, versus, creating 50 filters for all 50 states, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Giving the users the flexibility to build this, and not only can you build this very similar to that view that we saw before, the Excel type of rows and columns, but once you give someone the ability to build this view, you're also giving them the ability to dashboard it, which I think that'll be the next scene here, the display dashboard.
Yeah, that's a great use case, and even expanding on it just even a little bit further. is if Jim, for instance, were to create a filter, a user-defined filter, he has the ability to share it to other users within the organization. So Jim builds that use case where he's responsible for Ohio while I'm responsible for California and maybe a couple other states. He can create that filter, share with me. I can change the fixed constraints, and I don't have to recreate the wheel. I can just use what Jim already had built. But along that same line, as you see highlighted in green on the top, we have that same ability to take this information and display it as a dashboard. So when I click a little further, you'll see that I'm actually taking that display all contracts predefined filter that we initially started the conversation with, and we've taken all those data points and put them onto a dashboard. So on the top level, the bar chart, we're viewing all the contracts by a specific status. And then below, it's actually covered up by my graphic, but there's a pie chart that's based on the status. And on the right-hand side, next to that pie chart is a graph of all the results. The great thing is that this dashboard is dynamic. So if I were to interact with a piece of the pie or the columns in the bar chart, I would actually be able to slice and dice that data and then pull that results list back in that lower right-hand corner. So I'm actually taking that display all, putting in my search parameters in real time and pulling back a results list based on the selections that I've made in the other graphs. So if I were to open up one of those records specifically, this is what the user is going to be presented with. This is the application providing that full 360-degree view. The thing that we haven't mentioned yet is the great thing about WorkView is that we are able to actually pull data, not only store data, but pull data from other repositories and pull that into that single interface. That really is beneficial when you talk about the users being able to not have to go into multiple line of business applications. They can go into WorkView and see all of the data that's relevant to that specific transaction or case or investigation or whatever, what have you. They can see all of it in a concise view. So highlighting specifically the contextual data on the left-hand side, we're looking at all the information related to the request. One thing to point out when expanding a little bit further about those other line of business applications is, and it's cut off a little bit because of the screen, but down here with the external party, that external party information could be stored in your ERP. So that information like the vendor or the customer name, as well as the address and contact information. But then the contact list, like the administrator, or maybe even the requester, if it's an internal requester, can be maybe stored in your HRIS system. So really pulling in all that data from multiple applications at the same time. On to the right then would be all the business activities like the notes and tasks and all the maybe content that are associated with this. Specifically, if I move a little further, the documents that are all related to this. So we have the request and any drafting of that contract, as well as maybe any background checks or other things that we might have to do during the process. Not highlighted, but important also to mention is to the right of that documents is all the emails. So as we're corresponding back and forth with that external party, we can be capturing all those emails. So you have a full audit trail of the emails, all of the documents, as well as the audit history that is inherent in OnBase. And then of course, finally, the business process specifically. So the great thing is that graphically, we're not looking at for a status keyword. We can have it on the view itself, of course. But really, we're finding that users are much more apt to look very quickly and say, hey, in the process, we have just completed the negotiations. We're moving on to the agreement being signed. Historically speaking, we can see where it's been at what times and at dates that those steps have been completed, and then where it's going moving forward. And Jim kind of mentioned this before, but we can actually take other functionality and other features and functions of OnBase and modules of OnBase and take all of that data and create a contract from the data points, as well as we can actually store entire clauses for a contract and build a contract with all the different clauses that might need to be part of that overall arching contract draft. This is just illustrating this a little bit further. So WorkView, inherent native features are the tasks and reminders and the dashboarding and data importing and exporting. But really when the power of WorkView is is the ability to leverage other functionality within the Hyland platform. So allowing you to, and this kind of as a maybe from a real world example, 99.9% of the time when we're talking about WorkView, we're always also including workflow and Unity forms as part of that solution at the minimum. I had a customer actually make this analogy, and I think it's a really good one. So WorkView is the bus with all of the data and information that needs to go somewhere, but doesn't have an engine without workflow. So workflow is really that engine that's a complementary product, not a competitive product that I think a lot of times that we get confused by the naming conventions being very similar. But workflow is actually that engine that's taking that bus of all that data and moving it along the process or sending it to a specific individual, sending those notifications that we're all used to in the document side of the house. And then of course, reporting dashboards, giving you an insight into the overall of the process, as well as reporting on everything else that's happened in a more near real-time reporting feature.
That's a great point, Brian. Yeah, and I already went dark with the medical examiner, so we'll go to a feel-good one. An example is we have a large county customer that does reporting of lost animals through our form. When they fill that form out, it auto-generates a quote-unquote case in our system for a lost pet. And then using the ability for us to lay something like geospatial layering, we don't even have that listed here, but being able to pull, hey, the 10 closest dogs to this one that was found, and send notifications and do all those types of things. That's just a cool use case using a lot of this tool set.
Yeah, that's a great point. We're just really illustrating some of the very common feature or functions that we see WorkView being complementary with. But yes, there's absolutely other products in our suite that would absolutely be great complementary products. So really, the moral of the story here is that we're providing our customers with a Swiss Army knife of all of the content, all of the business processes, the content repository, forms, and reporting, just to name a few, giving them all those tools in one tool set in order to solve their business needs. So with that, I think I'll turn it back over to Jim for some resources.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one thing that we like to extend to our customers is for them to, this software truly does allow us to, quote unquote, walk the walk. We talk to you a lot about what it can do. Well, if you truly have a use case, if you have a spreadsheet or something like that, we can build, or show you exactly what that might look like, or an example of it from our world. If you go through the process and you have any questions on what solutions might be a good fit or may not be a good fit. I've heard partners mention this in the past, that the O in OnBase stands for options. You really can do a lot with this software. It's incredibly flexible. But, Brian, myself, we have a whole team over here that can maybe lead you down the path should you be doing it. There's certain applications that, we aren't great at, and there are off-the-shelf applications that are great fits. But our whole goal is to show you, if you were to purchase a point app for every single thing in your stack, you'd own 10 Walkmans, so to speak, or 10 CD players versus, owning that iPhone that can do so much more than just play that music, so to speak. So we also have a lot of training opportunities for our partners and customers. So right on training.hyland.com, you can find any of our training options that are available. And then lastly, the try.hyland that has some of our resources that I'll show you in just a moment here. This is a high level of what that workshop is. Really we can do a lot from start to finish here on why a customer would use OnBase for a particular use case. We can help you wireframe what that would look like. And like I mentioned before, that ACE file tool, we can maybe help you with that data model and show you what that would look like in our world. And then this is that try.hyland website I just mentioned. What we're trying to do here is produce a lot of different repeatable solutions for our partners and our customers. And these are completely free for you to download. And we've got nearly 30 plus of these applications that are available today. So with that, I'm going to actually jump over to a brief demonstration. Like Brian mentioned, WorkView can do a lot. Here's just some brief examples of some applications that we built over the past year for our customers and partners. Really good example. Last year with COVID-19, the ability for us to track something like COVID vaccines that are happening, or even think, how do most folks on the call think healthcare organizations were tracking, pop-up COVID testing clinics that were in a parking lot somewhere? Like I could tell you how it was on a spreadsheet. That's where they were keeping so much of this critical data. So I made sure to add that here, like the drive up, the old mall parking lot as the location. And here we can see, here's all the patient details, and what tier and phase this patient is in is all driven by what they do for a living. What their role, or in this case, they're a patient under acute care. So they fell into that first phase. We've got the different dates that are available here. And again, any of the documents that would tie to this, we have the ability, like we mentioned before, OnBase can drag and drop documents onto the screen here. So if I have a document that's part of this, I simply drag it onto the screen and let go, and OnBase will ask me, what are you putting in here? You can also program this to only capture certain documents, and then we would reverse index that document based on the keywords on the back of the screen here. So, we can make it really easy to build that story. If documents are not necessarily part of the initial process, but are part of the story that is built up over time, that's a great use case. Another use case is something as simple as software tracking or that application library. A lot of our customers struggle to show, here's everything that we own. Well, not only could we show you everything you own from an application side, we can then allow you to sort. Here's our cloud applications. Here's the applications used by this particular department. Here are the contracts that were used to purchase this application. So being able to refer back to the documents that might support that. In our world, the MRGs, right? The ability for you to store all those resource documents right on the back end. So in that example, here's an example of, all the software that we might own in our stack. Here's all of my publishers. And again, you can open up something like the Hyland Software record and see all the software that you own from this vendor. And then you can even open up that record, like open up OnBase, and here's the OnBase record. Here's the patches that were applied. I can scroll down and see any of the notes or tasks that might apply to this particular application. So this is that concept of that relational database. And like I mentioned before, this is incredibly easy to change and make your own. A good example here that popped up with a customer recently, cyber threats. Hey James, is there a way for us to track the cyber threats that would relate to this particular application? And let's just show how quickly we would be able to do something like that. On the application builder side, I would simply come in here and add a new class for cyber security or cyber threat. And then some of the things that we would track for cyber threat would likely include, we'll add some of those attributes, or AKA the keywords of the application, the start date and time. And you would pick that specific, data type. And just to show the different data types that we have available, we've got alphanumeric, we've got currency, date and time. We can create a calculated keyword that's going to be, a calculated attribute that's going to be dependent on other values that you're inputting into the system here. But important to this one, what would be something like a relationship back to the actual application itself. So that one-to-many type relationship, we create that right during this process here. You would select the related class as the application. And again, we would add more information here, like the end date, time, maybe a brief description of what happened, and some more details. And we can create specific data types for these, where the brief description might be 250 in length, but this details is going to be a formatted text field where someone can add not only some text, but also embed maybe a screenshot of that error they received or the email they received that kicked off this cyber threat or something like that along the way. So it's as easy as that. And then we would simply add that cyber threat information to this view. So you'll see here, the application builder is all built on this drag and drop type of design. And the ability to seamlessly grab any of the attributes or the tools that you might need along the way. So that's really what we had to present today in terms of the application builder platform, what we have to offer, some things to maybe look at internally within your own organization, how to identify some of those opportunities where you might be using those disparate access databases or that homegrown application or that shared spreadsheet that's out on some drive somewhere. We have a great tool that allows us to augment those types of applications. So I encourage you, if you see some value in this, engage with your partner, and we'd be happy to support them and get a workshop scheduled for you.